Dawn arrives subtly, filtering through the narrow windows of the Rue des Rosiers and illuminating the cool, damp stone walls. The air inside the small apartments is heavy with the mix of damp wool, wood smoke, and the faint aroma of yesterday's stew. A single candle flickers in a brass holder, casting a trembling light on the floorboards as a draft slips through a cracked shutter. The city awakens in silence. A cart creaks along the cobbled street, its wheels rumbling over the uneven stones, while the sounds are muffled by the soft earth of the alley. No voices echo, no calls ring out. The rhythm is measured, almost mechanical, dictated by the weight of habit. The baker's apprentice arrives before sunrise, unlocking the door with a key that has seen many years of use. The iron latch clicks softly, then fades into the quiet. Inside, the oven glows from the night's embers, ready to bake the day's bread. The dough, left to rise in a corner, has settled into a soft, porous mass, its surface slightly cracked. The baker kneads it slowly, his hands pressing into the flour-dusted surface in a steady, deliberate motion. There is no rush. The bread will be ready by midday. The market waits until then. The city does not require feeding before the sun climbs over the rooftops. Outside, the Seine flows beneath the stone arches of the Pont Neuf, its surface shimmering in the morning light. The water appears dark and almost black in the shadows under the bridge, but near the edges, it reflects the pale gold of the sky. A barge drifts downstream, its sails slack, its crew still asleep in the small cabin. The current moves gently, unhurried, indifferent to the passage of time, the changing of hours, or the approaching transition. The Marias remain still. Shutters remain closed, iron grates lowered, not for protection, but for privacy. The air carries the scent of damp stone and the delicate sweetness of blooming chestnut trees. The cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, bear the imprint of every passerby. They are not marked by violence, but by the repetition of daily routines. The same feet, the same carts, the same rhythms, day after day. A woman emerges from a narrow doorway, her apron securely tied, her hair pinned beneath a white cap. She carries a basket lined with a scrap of cloth. Her steps are purposeful, not hurried. She passes a fruit seller's cart, already stocked with apples and pears, their skins still dewy from the night. She exchanges no words, looks no one in the eye. She knows the price of each fruit, the weight of her basket, and the path to the market square. The city operates in layers. The lower streets buzz with laborers and vendors, their voices low, their movements economical. The upper floors remain quiet, windows closed, curtains drawn. The silence above is not empty, it is filled with the sounds of sleep, routine, and lives adhering to expectation. The houses are not empty, they are filled with people who know their place, their time, and their role. The light shifts, and the sun climbs higher, warming the stone facades. Shadows shorten, and the air grows warmer. The day's rhythm sets in, with the clatter of a milk cart, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the soft footsteps of a child returning from school. The city seems to hold its breath, unaware of the change that is coming. No one senses the impending shift. The streets, buildings, and routines remain unchanged. The air still carries the familiar sense of bread, river, and stone. The city breathes as it always has, unaware that it is, in fact, holding its breath. Dawn has passed, and the city now pulses with the measured rhythm of mid-morning. Sunlight slants across rooftops, casting sharp, clean shadows that transform the slate tiles into a mosaic of darkness and silver. Once crisp and still, the air has begun to warm from the stone walls and sun-kissed cobblestones, a gentle, persistent heat that feels more present than urgent. The market square slowly awakens, not with a rush of people, but with the accumulation of small things. Baskets arranged at stall edges, barrels rolled into place, wooden crates carefully stacked. Vendors move with practiced precision, their conversations sparse. A fishmonger selects a herring from a wooden tray, examines its gills, and sets it down with a soft thud. A woman with a basket of herbs arranges sprigs of thyme and sage in neat rows, their fragrance wafting faintly through the air. Prices are agreed upon, routines established, a silent, familiar dance. The stalls, built of weathered wood, are worn smooth by years of use and rain. Faded canvas awnings stretch taut over the front, offering minimal shade but preventing goods from drying too quickly in the sun. Cool, dim, and slightly damp, the interior space beneath is where the day begins. Packed earth floors, uneven and cracked, bear small pools of rainwater that have seeped through the roof, uncleaned and accepted as part of the space. The narrow street is lined with close-set buildings, their facades a mix of stone colors and textures, some weathered, others freshly repaired. Small, rarely opened windows are framed by thick shutters, maintaining privacy through distance and silence. The interior layout is designed for functionality, not visibility. Upstairs, rooms are layered, with the ground floor dedicated to service, kitchen, storage, and entrance. Upper floors are for living, sleeping, and waiting. Narrow, steep staircases, poorly lit, serve as both sound insulators and physical barriers, keeping households separate. The kitchen, though often hidden, is the heart of the home, where fire warms the hearth, stews simmer, and bread is baked. The hearth, built into the wall, is cracked in places, its wide maw capable of holding a substantial log. Soot-marked flues lead to the roof, where chimneys, unclean but unapologetic, release smoke. Meals are simple: coarse rye and wheat bread, morning stews with beans, onions, and meat, often pork or mutton, and seasonal vegetables from local farms. Milk comes from a cow in a shed, measured in pails. Salt is imported and precious, sugar a rare treat. Water is drawn from a well in the courtyard or a pipe connected to the Seine, unfiltered and unsterilized. It is sufficient, though not always safe, and the city has no system for purification. People accept its limitations, drinking, cooking, and cleaning with it without question. The day's rhythm is set by the sun, not clocks. Tasks dictate the hours, not minutes. The baker rises with dawn, the fishmonger appears at midday, the washerwoman works at dusk. Children return from school as the light fades, and the market closes when the last customer leaves. The city operates on need, not schedules. This consistency is not stagnation but continuity. The city endures not because of grand repairs or dramatic changes, but because its systems are sufficient. Yet sufficiency is not stability, nor is it fairness. It is a delicate balance that relies on the unspoken expectation of the status quo. The city breathes, unaware that it holds its breath, trapped not by external forces, but by the weight of habit. Its systems work, but not because of progress or justice, merely because they have always worked this way. The path forward is narrow, the ground hard, and the way unclear, yet the rhythm persists. Steps are repeated, light remains constant, and silence reigns, and beneath it all, an unspoken anticipation of what has yet to be named. Dawn has not yet broken, but the city is already awake in its quietest form, the space between sleep and labor, where the weight of the night still lingers in the stone, and the air carries the memory of warmth. The streets of the Marais are not empty, but unoccupied. A single shutter creaks open on the third floor of a narrow house, revealing a hand that reaches out to adjust a curtain. The movement is slow, deliberate, not rushed by urgency, but shaped by habit. The hand withdraws, and the light returns to the dim interior, where a fire has been banked for the night, its embers glowing faintly beneath a thin layer of ash. The house is built into the slope of the land, its foundations sunk deep into the earth, and its walls thick with centuries of damp. The floorboards, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, creak only when pressed at certain angles, as if the building itself resists movement. The rooms are small, their ceilings low, and their windows narrow and high, designed not to admit light, but to limit exposure. The space is not meant for comfort, but for containment of heat, privacy, and time. Inside, a woman stirs in the kitchen. She does not rise fully, but shifts on the wooden bench, her back against the wall. The hearth is cold, yet the room retains the warmth of the previous day's fire. She reaches for a small pot, lifts it with both hands, and places it on the stone hearth. The metal is cool, but she knows it will warm with the first flame. She strikes a match from a small tin, holds it to the wick of a tallow candle, and the flame catches, trembling, then steadies. The light is weak but sufficient. She does not look around. She knows the layout of the room by touch. The cupboard is to her left, its door slightly warped from damp. Above it, a single clay bowl, cracked at the rim, sits on a shelf. The table is scarred, with knife marks, its surface stained with years of oil and food. She does not clean it, not because she is careless, but because the marks are part of the rhythm, the history of use. The same knife has cut bread, meat, vegetables, and herbs for over a decade. The same table has hosted meals, repairs, and silence. The candle flickers. A draft slips through a crack in the wall, not from a door or window, but from the mortar between stones. The air is thick with the scent of old wood, damp wool, and the faint, persistent smell of the river, ever present, even in the heart of the city. The Seine is not visible, but its presence is felt in the walls, in the dampness of the floor, in the way the stone breathes at night. She pours water from a clay jug into the pot. The water is drawn by hand from a well in the courtyard, carried in a bucket, and stored in a cool corner. It is not clean, not safe, but sufficient. She knows the difference between need and desire. She knows water is not a luxury but a necessity, measured not by purity but by quantity. The fire is lit, and the pot begins to steam. She does not wait for it to boil. She knows the rhythm of heat, the way it rises, how long it takes to warm a pot, how long it takes to cook a stew. She adds a few dried beans, a pinch of salt, a small piece of mutton, and a few onions. The ingredients are simple, familiar, unchanging. They are not chosen for taste but for survival. The house is not silent. It creaks. The walls settle. The floorboards shift. The wind, when it comes, moves through the cracks in the stone, whispering through the rooms like a memory. The city outside is not quiet either. The river flows beneath the bridge, its current steady and unbroken. Boats pass at night, their sails slack, their crews asleep. The sound of water against stone is constant, a low hum beneath the surface of the day. Upstairs, a child stirs. The bed is narrow, the mattress thin, the sheets rough. The child does not open their eyes immediately. They listen to the sounds of the house, the creak of the floor, the soft hiss of the fire, the faint movement below. They know the rhythm of the day. They know the fire will be lit, the stew made, and the door will open when the sun climbs high. They know the world outside will not change until the season shifts. The house is not a home in the modern sense. It is not warm with affection or filled with light. It is a structure that endures. It is not designed for joy but for survival. It is not built for comfort but for continuity. The walls hold the weight of time, not in memory but in material. The stones are not carved for beauty but for strength. The door is functional, the window for air. Yet the house is not lifeless. It is filled with small signs of use: the worn step, the scuffed wall, the cracked bowl, the stained table. These are not flaws but records. They are evidence of a system that works not because it is perfect, but because it is repeated. The same actions are performed, the same materials used, the same rhythms maintained. The city operates on this principle, not progress, but persistence. The light outside shifts. The sky begins to turn pale, not with dawn, but with the slow rise of the sun over the rooftops. Shadows on the street grow longer, then shorter. The air warms, not suddenly but steadily. The river reflects the first gold, not in brightness, but in the way light catches its surface. A barge moves slowly, its crew still asleep. The city does not need to be awake. It is already moving. The woman stirs the stew. The beans are soft, the meat tender, the salt just enough. She does not taste it. She knows the balance. She has made it 100 times. She does not need to measure, question, or remember. She knows the recipe, not from memory, but from repetition. The house continues to breathe. The walls settle. The floorboards shift. The fire burns low. The river flows. The city moves. And beneath it all, the system holds. Not because it is strong, but expected. Not because it is just, but familiar. Not because it is efficient, but sufficient. The rhythm is not broken. The light is not interrupted. The air is not changed. The water is not purified. The city does not know what is coming. It only knows how to go on. Dawn has not yet arrived, but the city is already alive, not with noise or haste, but with a steady, unyielding pulse of routine. The streets of the morass remain peaceful, though not deserted. Life flows in the spaces between moments, in the play of light on stone, the shift of air through cracks in walls, and the seepage of water into the earth beneath the cobblestones. The city doesn't awaken with anticipation. It awakens through habit. The river flows beneath the Pont Neuf, its surface dark and still in the bridge's shadow, but near the edges, the first light of morning touches the water, transforming it into a shimmering veil of silver. The current moves with a calm indifference, as it has for centuries, unaware of time's passage, unmarred by change. A barge drifts downstream, its sails slack, its crew still asleep in the cabin. The hull creaks gently as the current tilts it, a constant, quiet reminder of motion's persistence. The houses on the Rue des Rosiers stand close together, their facades pressed against one another, windows small and high, often shuttered even in daylight. The spaces between them are narrow, deep, and shaded, creating a network of cool, still alleys, not designed for visibility, but for privacy. These passageways are not meant to be seen, only traversed. The stones underfoot are worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, each groove a record of a journey taken, a path followed, a life lived uninterrupted. Inside one such house, the kitchen is a haven of warmth rather than light. The hearth is cold, but the walls retain the heat of the previous day. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone, old wood, and a persistent hint of the river, a constant, even in the heart of the city. The floorboards, though worn in places, shift slightly underfoot, not from weakness, but from their constant use. Cracks in the walls are not flaws but channels, for air, sound, and the slow passage of time. A woman moves through the kitchen with quiet grace. She doesn't speak or look up. Her hands follow a familiar routine. The cupboard to the left, the clay jug on the shelf, the pot waiting on the hearth. She pours water into the pot, then strikes a match from a tin. The flame flickers, then steadies. The fire grows, not with haste, but with patience. She knows the rhythm of heat, the time it takes to warm a pot, to cook a stew. The ingredients are simple: beans, onions, a small piece of meat, a pinch of salt. They are chosen not for taste, but for availability, for survival. They are not new, rare, or special. They are what has always been. The fire burns low, not from lack of fuel, but by design. It's not meant to be bright or warm, but sufficient, enough to cook, enough to ward off the chill, enough to last through the day. Smoke rises through the flue, unclean and unregulated, but accepted. It's not a problem, it's a condition. The chimney is maintained not for efficiency but function. It works, even if it's not perfect. The system doesn't need to be better. It needs to be enough. The house is not a home in the modern sense. It's built for endurance, not comfort. Thick walls, small windows, solid doors, these are design choices, not limitations. Low ceilings, small rooms, steep staircases, they encourage stillness, not movement, and repetition, not change. Upstairs, a child stirs. The bed is narrow, the mattress thin, the sheets rough. They listen to the fire, the floorboards, the distant hum of the river. the familiar rhythm of the day. They know the sun will rise, the stew will be made, the door will open when the day grows bright. They understand the city's rhythm, unchanging until the seasons shift. They know the city doesn't wake with purpose but with habit. The city operates not by time but by need. The baker rises with dawn, not by clock, but to light the oven for the first customers. The fishmonger arrives at midday, not by schedule but to sell the day's catch before the sun peaks. The washerwoman works at dusk, not for light, but for cooler water and still air. The market closes when the last customer leaves, not by clock, but when the day is done. The day is measured not in minutes but in tasks. The city moves not with urgency but with necessity. This rhythm is not stagnation, it's continuity. The city endures not for strength but repetition. The same actions, the same materials, the same rhythms are maintained. The same bread is baked, the same stew cooked, the same door opened each morning. The system works not because it's efficient but because it's expected. It's not fair, not just, but sufficient. Light shifts outside. The sky turns pale, not with dawn but as the sun rises over the rooftops. Shadows lengthen, then shorten. The air warms, not suddenly but steadily. The river reflects the first gold, not in brilliance, but in the way light catches its surface. The barge continues its slow drift, its crew still asleep. The city doesn't need to be awake, it's already moving. The woman stirs the stew, the beans soft, the meat tender, the salt just right. She doesn't taste it, she knows the balance. She's made it 100 times. She doesn't need to measure, question, or remember. She knows the recipe by repetition. The house breathes, the walls settle, the floorboards shift, the fire burns low, the river flows, and the city moves. And in this silence, this repetition, this unbroken rhythm, lies its own end. Not from violence or revolution, but from the slow, inevitable weight of what has always been. The city doesn't change in an instant. Its evolution is subtle, seen in the way light dances across stone, water seeps through mortar, and a cobblestone surface wears down inch by inch over decades. Paris, in these final days, maintains its rhythm, unaltered yet unbreakable, shifting in ways that elude the naked eye yet felt deeply. The Seine continues to flow, its current indifferent to the passage of time, yet the water carries a different weight. It's not just fish and silt, it's the burden of memories, secrets, and preparations. The barge drifts downstream, its crew still asleep, but the hull feels heavier than last year. The wood is older, the sails frayed, and the mast leans slightly to starboard, guided by the river's relentless pull. The vessel moves not by choice, but by necessity. The houses on Rue des Rosiers are not crumbling, they've simply aged. The stone has darkened, mortar cracked, and shutters warped from rain and time. These cracks are not flaws, but gateways, places where air circulates, light enters, and sound escapes. They're left untouched, unmended, unnoticed. The city doesn't maintain its buildings for aesthetics or safety, it does so for functionality. As long as the walls stand, the roof keeps out the rain, and the door swings on its hinges, it's enough. Perfection isn't required, continuity is. The kitchen remains the heart of the home, not for warmth, but for necessity. The hearth burns low, not from a lack of fuel, but a calculated choice. One log is enough to cook, to ward off the chill, to last the day. Wood is gathered not for size, but what's readily available. It's what's left, what's carried, what's found. The same pot, knife, and table, each worn smooth by constant use, each marked by time's passage. These marks are not signs of neglect, but of repetition, not flaws, but records. The people in these homes don't often speak, not out of shyness, but because their actions convey everything needed. The woman knows when the child stirs, not by hearing, but by feeling the floorboard's subtle shift. The child knows when the stew is ready, not by smell, but the rhythm of the fire. The city isn't built for conversation, but for coordination. Its system relies not on communication, but on expectation. Everyone knows their role, their timing, their place, and it needs no verbal confirmation. The market, though small, buzzes with purpose. It's filled with necessities, not desires. Apples, their due still visible, are stacked in wooden crates. Fish lie on trays, their gills vibrant red, eyes clear. Herbs fill rows, their scent subtle yet present. Prices are agreed upon in quiet consensus, not haggled over. The exchange is a confirmation, not a transaction. Buyers and sellers know their roles. The system balances and no one questions it. The city doesn't rely on clocks but on the sun. The baker rises with the first light. The fishmonger arrives when the market's ready, and the washerwoman works as the water cools. The day isn't measured in minutes but tasks. The city moves not with urgency but necessity. This isn't efficiency or progress, it's sufficiency. The city endures not because of its strength but its repetition. The same actions, materials, and routines are followed daily, annually. The system works because it's familiar, not because it's good. It's not challenged, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. Yet in this familiarity, a paradox emerges. The system is stable but fragile. It's predictable, yet adaptable. It's sufficient but not sustainable. The same bread is baked, stews are cooked, doors are opened, but the ingredients change. Water is no longer pristine. Wood is older. People are different. The city, though unchanged, feels different. The Seine flows, but the current is slower. The barge's crew is more weary, the vessel heavier. Houses stand, but their foundations shake, their floors creak. The fire burns lower, not from frugality, but scarcity. The system isn't breaking, but it's not as robust as it once was. It's not failing, but it's not improving. It's not changing, but it's not static. The city doesn't realize it's transforming. It doesn't sense its strain or the approaching limit. It simply continues, without question. And in this quiet continuity, in the unbroken rhythm of a city without a name for its end, lies its transformation. Not through violence or revolution, but through the slow, inevitable weight of the familiar. The system doesn't collapse because it's weak. It's too strong in its own way, too persistent, too expected, too comfortable. It endures not because it's good, but because it's not questioned. Light shifts, not with dawn, but as the sun rises over the rooftops. Shadows lengthen, then shorten. Air warms steadily, not suddenly. The river reflects the first gold, not in brilliance, but softly catching the sunlight on its surface. The barge crew sleeps on, unaware the city is already in motion. The city does not prepare for change. It does not foresee it, nor even notice it as it unfolds. What is experienced is not a sudden rupture, but a subtle, steady accumulation, a slow shift in the balance of the taken for granted. The Seine, still flowing beneath the Pont Neuf, carries more than water. It bears the weight of unspoken grievances, the residue of unmet needs, and the memory of hunger that has gone unacknowledged. The current remains constant, yet the depth has changed. The riverbed is not deeper or shallower, but the water's movement across it has shifted. The drag of the barge is heavier now, not due to increased cargo, but because the current itself resists, as if the river is remembering its own power. The houses on the Rue des Rosiers appear unchanged, but their rhythm has altered in ways that cannot be quantified. The shutter that once creaked open at dawn now opens later, and when it does, the hand adjusting the curtain hesitates. The fire in the hearth is lit with careful consideration, not out of fear but calculation. The same log is used, but it burns slower, its embers lingering longer. The pot is filled, the stew prepared, but the portions are smaller. Not through scarcity, but self-restraint. The body knows its limit, even if the mind does not. The kitchen, once a stage for automatic repetition, now resonates with a new kind of silence. It is not the silence of rest or routine, but of focused attention. The woman's movements, once mechanical, are now deliberate. Cooking is no longer just a survival mechanism, but a moment of presence. The same tools, same table, same ingredients, yet something has shifted. The system remains the same, but the relationship to it has changed. The market retains its form. Apples glisten with dew, fish have clear eyes, and herbs line the stalls in neat rows. However, the exchanges are different. The woman who once passed by indifferently now pauses, looking at the fishmonger, not the fish. She observes the lines etched on his face, the slight tremor in his hands as he sets down a herring, and the exhaustion in his eyes, not from labor but anticipation. The price is agreed upon without words, but the silence between them is longer. It is not a lack of communication but a new understanding, silent yet profound. The baker's oven, once lit with unwavering certainty at dawn, now waits. The apprentice arrives earlier, but the door remains locked for a moment longer. The fire is banked for longer than usual, and the dough left to rise does not settle as it once did. It rises unevenly, as if the air itself has changed. The bread will be baked, but not at the predetermined time. The rhythm is still present but observed. Upstairs, the child stirs not with the same certainty. They listen to the creaks of the floorboards, the silence between them, the river's hum, and the light filtering through the crack in the wall. They sense the change in the air, the shift in the rhythm, the warmth that does not quite reach the stone walls. They do not understand what is happening, but they feel it. The world is not as it was, not because anything has broken, but because something has begun to shift. The city continues its routine. The milk cart clatters down the street. The blacksmith hammers at midday, and the washerwoman works at dusk. Yet the timing is not precise. The hours are measured not by the sun, but by the weight of what is happening. The sun rises, but its light feels different, less certain, more questioning. Shadows shorten, but their clarity is absent. The air warms, but the warmth does not penetrate the stone walls. The river reflects a golden hue, but the reflection is faint and blurred. The system is not failing. It is not collapsing. It is not even transforming. It remains the same streets, houses, and routines. Yet the relationship to these routines has changed. People no longer move through them as if they are inevitable. They move through them as if they are choices. The fire is lit not because it must be, but because it is possible. The bread is baked not because it always has been, but because it is still desired. This is not revolution, protest, or awareness. It is the quiet, steady shift in perception, the moment when the familiar feels strange, when the unbroken rhythm begins to carry weight, and when the ordinary becomes a form of resistance. The city is unaware of its own transformation. It does not realize it is changing, preparing, or already in motion. It only knows that the light is different, the air heavier, and the silence longer. And within this difference, this weight, and this silence, the foundation of what is to come is already taking shape. The system endures, not because of its strength, but because of expectation. But expectation is not permanence. The same bread is baked, the same stew cooked, and the same door opened. Yet each act now carries a new meaning, not because it is different, but because it is noticed. The seine flows, the houses stand, and the fire burns low. The city moves, and in the stillness between moments, in the light falling on a cracked wall, in the sound of a shutter opening a few seconds later than usual, and in the child's listening to the silence before rising, the future is not announced or declared. It simply exists, not in a single moment, but in the accumulation of countless small, seemingly unremarkable changes. Dawn creeps into the Rue des Rosières, seeping through the narrow windows, its light slowly warming the cool, damp stone walls. The remnants of fire linger, ashes, wood smoke, and a faint scent of old wool in the air inside the house. A flickering candle, nearly spent, dances in its brass holder, its flame trembling, not from drafts, but from exhaustion. The kitchen, the heart of the house, persists as the center, not by heat, but by function. The hearth, cold to the touch, recalls the warmth of previous fires, An empty pot left over from the day before sits on the hearth, its metal surface dulled. A familiar knife, its blade nicked and worn, rests on the table alongside a cracked clay bowl. The table itself bears scars, deep grooves from countless uses, stains from decades of oil and broth. These marks are not signs of neglect but records. Each one tells a story of meals, repairs, and moments of stillness. The woman moves through the kitchen with a newfound attentiveness. She doesn't rush to light the fire but pauses, her hand hovering over the tinderbox. The match is struck, but the flame struggles to catch. She holds it steady, watching as the wick trembles. Finally, the fire ignites, not with a burst, but a deliberate breath. It's not a ritual, it's a choice. She chooses to light it, not because it's expected, but because it's possible. Water from the clay jug in the courtyard is drawn, not clean or safe, but sufficient. She pours it into the pot, her movements deliberate, not habitual. She knows the weight of the jug, the sound of water falling, and the way the pot tilts when full. This isn't automatic, it's measured. She doesn't taste or measure, she feels the balance in the moment. The fire burns low, not from lack of fuel but design. It's not meant to be bright or warm the room, it's meant to endure, to be enough. Smoke rises from the flue, unclean and unregulated, yet accepted. It's not a problem, it's a condition. The chimney is maintained not for efficiency but function. It works, even if it's not perfect. The system doesn't need to be better, it needs to be enough. Upstairs, a child stirs. The bed is narrow, the mattress thin, the sheets rough. The child doesn't immediately open its eyes but listens. The fire is lit, the pot on the hearth, water pouring. The familiar routines are present but different. The pause before the match is struck, the hesitation in the hand, the slow catch of the flame, all are noted. The rhythm has changed, but not in a dramatic way. The same tasks are performed, but with a new awareness. The city outside remains still. The Seine flows beneath the Pont Neuf, its surface dark under the bridge, shimmering at the edges. A barge drifts downstream, its sails slack, its crew still asleep. The hull creaks, not as easily as before. The current is heavier, carrying the weight of what has been endured, what hasn't been said, and what hasn't been named. The market square is yet to wake. Stalls remain covered, barrels rolled into place, crates stacked. The fishmonger hasn't arrived, the baker hasn't lit the oven, and the washerwoman hasn't come. The city doesn't wait for a signal, it waits for a moment, small, unmarked, unannounced. The familiar rhythms persist, but they're not the same. The same tasks are performed, but with a new weight. The system endures not because of its strength, but because it's expected. It's not challenged because it's familiar. The same bread is baked, the same stew cooked, the same door opened. Yet each act carries a new meaning, not because it's different, but because it's noticed. The fire is lit, not because it must be, but because it's possible. The bread is baked not because it always has been, but because it's still desired. This isn't revolution or protest, it's not even awareness. It's a quiet shift in perception. The moment when the familiar feels strange, when the unbroken rhythm begins to carry weight, and when the ordinary becomes a form of resistance. The city doesn't realize it's changing. It doesn't sense its strain or the approaching limit. It continues without question. The milk cart clatters down the street. The blacksmith hammers at midday, and the washerwoman works at dusk. The timing isn't precise. The hours are measured not by the sun, but by the weight of what's happening. The sun rises, but its light feels different, less certain, more questioning. Shadows shorten, but their clarity is absent. The air warms, but the warmth doesn't penetrate the stone walls. The river reflects a golden hue, but the reflection is faint and blurred. The system isn't failing, it's not collapsing, it's not even transforming. It remains the same streets, houses, and routines. Yet the relationship to these routines has changed. People no longer move through them as if they're inevitable. They move through them as if they're choices. The fire is lit, not because it must be, but because it's possible. The bread is baked not because it always has been, but because it's still desired. And in this quiet, in the stillness between moments, in the light falling on a cracked wall, in the sound of a shutter opening a few seconds later than usual, and in the child's listening to the silence before rising, the future isn't announced or declared. It simply exists, not in a single moment, but in the accumulation of countless small, seemingly unremarkable changes. The city breathes, unaware it's holding its breath. It doesn't know it's already in motion. It only knows that the light is different, the air heavier, and the silence longer. And within this difference, this weight, and this silence, the foundation of what's to come is already taking shape. The system endures not because it's strong, but because it's expected. But expectation is not permanence. The same bread is baked, the same stew cooked, and the same door opened. Yet each act now carries a new meaning. Not because it's different, but because it's noticed. The fire is lit, not because it must be, but because it's possible. The bread is baked not because it always has been, but because it's still desired. And in this quiet, in the stillness between moments, in the light falling on a cracked wall, in the sound of a shutter opening a few seconds later than usual, and in the child's listening to the silence before rising, the future is not announced or declared. It simply exists, not in a single moment, but in the accumulation of countless small, seemingly unremarkable changes. The city moves, unaware it's changing. It only knows that the rhythm persists. And in the persistence, in the repetition, in the unbroken continuity of a life lived without question, the shift is already complete. Not through violence, not through revolution, but through the slow, inevitable weight of what has always been.